we're gonna go ahead on and get started, and which is funny because some of the stuff that I'm gonna talk about in this PowerPoint is dealing with some of the stuff that we just talked about in our meeting
Interesting.
just a few minutes ago. So yes, so you will kind of see some of the same information and some of the same concepts being talked about.
Okay.
But of course, we have our team norms that we normally follow at our PLC meetings. Everyone must participate, respect each other's voices, be on time and come prepared, and then be solution oriented. I know I met with you probably a couple of weeks ago now, and you gave me the okay for the walkthroughs. I did do the walkthroughs, and we'll talk about that also. And then, of course, I did the survey, the teacher empowerment survey, and then we're going to talk about those results and then the results from the 5 different walkthroughs that we did. Just some research that we did at the beginning of my AAPTEL test that we talked about. It says professional developments are described as an essential instrument that deepens the content, knowledge, and cultivate their teaching understanding. And then also they talked about interview panels and how they can be used to interview possible new hires for classroom teachers or anybody else in the school system. Okay, so the teacher empowerment survey that was sent out, it was a total of 5 questions. I had a total of 30 people to respond back to that survey, and then this is just a synopsis of those survey questions that were completed. The first question, which we did pretty good on, teacher has input, I need to fix that. Teacher has input on professional development offerings at the school. I think that's something that we do very well, especially with Ms. Dinkins sending out the PD, the STAR PDs that we have, and then she also gives us an option to decide or to give input of what we want to see next. So I think that's one good thing that we do, one wonderful thing that we do, especially with professional developments.
Yeah, and we'll be starting to talk about that as we plan for next year
yeah.
using our Title I funds.
I know she talked about also, I think the last PD we did, she said that the next one, which will be in April, it'll be going across the board. So I guess we'll be with 3rd grade and 4th, and then 4th and 5th.
It's very nicely laid out.
Yes. The second question says, teacher plays a role in the development of the improvement plan. For that one, we had 87% said yes, and then 13% said no for that one. So that was also a high one. I think question 1 and question 2 were our 2 highest percentages for the survey that we completed. Question 3, teacher plays a role in setting school-wide policies. That one was 67% said yes, and 33% said no for that question. When I looked at it, I kind of looked at it like rules and procedures, but then also like things that everybody across the school does that we have to have buy-in for. So that was one of the things that I looked at when they talked about school-wide policies.
So that kind of goes back to what we just talked about.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And that's why I was looking at that section when we were looking at the data. I kind of looked at that section to see how it was. And most of that was between I think it was 3.4 to 3.6 out of 5. So I mean, it wasn't low, but it wasn't high either, because I think majority of everything else was a 4.0 or something. This one was a low one for us. Teacher has input in the development or the management of the school budget. When I looked at it, I was thinking about Title I, and then I also thought about when Ms. Dinkins came around and she asked us, what were some of those programs and things that we wanted. Everybody probably didn't look at it like how I kind of looked at it, so it might be different. Maybe that's why I'm thinking the number was lower than it was. But then I also don't remember us having a meeting per se to discuss what the school budget was and how it could be, or how the different components that come with this, I guess maybe.
I've never seen that done in a school.
Yeah.
But that would be a cool thing to do.
Do they do it for Title I budgets, or they just ask, what are some things that you guys need per se?
I mean, I've seen it done with team leaders. I've seen it done. That goes back to teachers have input on school policies too. I think we often meet with team leaders, but not with every teacher. And we might, with what we just came from in that meeting with that input, that might be something that we want to look at.
You know what, now that I think about it, and it probably was maybe 2 or 3 years ago, we had different committees before the end of the school year, and it had, each person on the team had to be involved with one of the committees. So one of them was the schedule, one of them were I think rules and procedures. It was 4 or 5 different committees, and each person had to be involved. It had to be one person from each grade level, and we came in the conference room and we kind of worked through like some of the things. I know with the schedule, it wasn't as far as us making the schedule, but it was just giving our input on what we thought, and
So,
then
like,
they took back.
We don't have enough time during planning.
Yeah.
We need longer time.
Yeah.
And then you look at the schedule and you see, oh, related arts has a little bit of extra here. Could we do X, Y, and Z?
Mm-hmm.
Some people have talked about stuff like that. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah. So maybe that could be something that we could possibly think of. Just
Yeah.
come up with different committees so you all won't have to do so much of the planning per se, like over the
Summer
Summer
and it
break.
gives teacher input.
Yeah.
That's what we need. That's a great idea.
And the last question is teacher plays a role in the hiring process of new teachers. This is something also I think deals with a lot of team leads do it, but I don't know if it's open up to like everybody. I think most of the time, I know when I've been on committees for hiring new teachers here, it was like certain people.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that's why for this one, 57% said yes, and then 43% said no, because it's probably like the same people over and over, and it's not open up to the
Well,
entire
and
school.
to be honest on that, there is such a shortage that when we see a teacher, we honestly will often grab them and go, hey, can we video interview you in about an hour? And we can't pull a team together anymore.
Yeah.
And so that's how a lot of the hiring is done right now. However, I have always been a part of schools who included a team.
Yeah.
We have Ms. Timmerman obviously moving out of her position, and so maybe you get the kindergarten team together to
Mhm.
say, what do you, so I've done it that way. I've gone to a couple of teams and said, as we hire like preschool, what do you need in a teacher? And then they told me ahead of time, and so that was good. But it's really hard to get coverage.
Yeah.
It's really hard to ask people to stay after
After school,
and then you have a shortage, and so if you don't jump on a person,
then you might
they're
lose
going to
them.
be gone. So
And then
I
you're
don't
like, okay.
mean to make excuses, but those are some of the justifications for that.
Which
Yeah.
is understandable, because I know last year when Ms. Williams, we just so happened to talk her into coming back, and I was like, so are you really going to do it, Ms. Williams? She was like, yeah, I'll do it. It's like, okay, well, I'm about to call Dr. Prowse to let her know you got to fill out your
Yeah,
application.
yeah.
Yeah, I'll do it. I'm like, are you sure? And I
Hurry,
remember Dr.
get her
Prowse,
while she
I
can
know.
sign on the dotted line.
I remember Dr. Prowse asked me, she was like, well, do you want to sit in on the interview? I was like, no, I know Miss Davenport. Well, at that point, I used to call her Miss Davenport. I'm like, no, I know Miss Davenport. I don't need to sit in. She was like, you sure? I'm like, no, I know what she's about. So
Right.
I definitely understand.
But then I think about younger teachers who may not have ever had that opportunity. And the more you interview, the better you are at interviewing. And so it really is very important for teachers to be a part of that process. And I think we need to find a way to get back to that.
And I know with me per se, this is my second teaching job. My first teaching job, I don't even remember doing an interview. It was, oh, you're such and such cousin. I'm like, yeah, that's my cousin. Oh, well, you're good. Go ahead on. I'm like, oh. But I have all of the stuff I want to
You were
show
ready,
you. And I'm
yeah.
like, no, you're fine. Just go
Oh,
ahead on.
good.
Just be like, oh. Okay.
Wow. Well, that's pretty much how it is
What-
now. You're like, somebody? All right. Here, go ahead. You're good.
Oh, gosh. All right, so those were all of the interview questions and the data collected from that. Now for my walkthrough observations, I did.
How were your walkthroughs? What'd you think?
So, okay, I did 5 classes. I did Miss Johnson. At that point, she was doing an ELA lesson.
Okay.
I did Miss Hall Jacobs. Miss Hall Jacobs was doing administering a math test for fractions. I did Miss Dawkins. She was in the middle of starting a reading test, and then she was working on, they were transitioning to math. I did Miss Crawford, which she was working on the math lesson, and then I also did Miss Edgerton.
Okay.
So those were the 5 that I did. All of them use technology.
Good.
I want to say one of the 5 were implementing the ABIT strategies. I know we're at ABIT schools, so I guess that's something that we possibly need to work on. But all of them, they were implementing like PD strategies that we have learned in the past. So I thought that was good also.
Yes.
Everybody had rules and procedures posted, but one teacher, I'm sure you know, was struggling with like the classroom management aspects of it. She was teaching her heart away, but the kids were like all over the place.
All over
I
the
was
place.
like,
Yeah.
And I tried not to say something, but it was one little student. He was like, I'm ready to go home. I'm ready to go home. I'm ready to go home. And I was just, I'm sorry, I couldn't take it anymore. It was like 15 minutes in. I was like, come here, baby. We can't do this. He was like, okay. I was like, well, who was your teachers last year? Miss Crawford. I said, you know you did not do that in Miss Crawford's class. Do not do that while she's teaching. He was like, yes, ma'am. I said, now you go sit down and go get your stuff done. He was like, okay. But I mean, she was just teaching her
They
hard way,
can do
but
it, yeah.
she struggles. I can tell she struggles with that part of it, and I don't know how receptive she is to like help.
She has had the most help I've ever seen
Okay.
because Miss Dawkins is her mentor.
Okay.
And
And I
she's
love
had,
Miss
and she's had, not only her induction coach, Bree Walker has worked with her extensively, Jennifer Korn has worked with her extensively. I have offered, she hasn't taken me up on anything, which to some degree I understand because I'm an evaluator, but I promised her I like to be a coach. I'd rather be a coach. I'll come in, I will rearrange your classroom, I will help you set up your procedures.
She did have a lot of stuff everywhere, and I'm the type,
Very
I don't
unorganized.
deal with a lot of clutter. Like
Yeah, I don't
clutter.
either, and it drives me crazy.
Yeah,
And
it
it
is,
sets
yeah.
the tone for the class, so when you see chaos in the organization,
Yeah.
and I've pointed that out to her. So along the way, I've given very specific feedback, offered solutions, offered support in other people since she didn't want me to come in. Not that she said it that
Yeah.
way, not at all, but I understand. I'm here, you don't want your boss coming in, but I like doing it,
And you want to see her succeed.
I did want to see her succeed, but she's not coming back. So yeah, that's just how it is. So I'm kind of glad you got to see. You really saw a good variety. Now you did go to some of the strongest teachers in the building, and then you went to one that's not coming back.
Yeah.
So there was I could have pointed you to others who are very in between and depending on the day you hit them.
Okay.
But you saw some excellent teachers.
Because I still have to do some more intern hours. So you can just shoot me an email, and then I have no problem. I can just go in and just look.
Yeah.
Because when I went in, I just told them, hi, I'm just coming to observe. They was like, huh? And I was like, I'm just looking. It was like, well, we're testing. It's okay. I'm still gonna do what I need to do. So
Yeah.
they were fine, and they were receptive to me. They were looking like, what you talking about, Skinner? But
Yeah.
they were fine with it.
Well, it's always awkward for me to go in because I know everybody is like that. But walkthroughs are they're like, people get really, really antsy about it, but they truly are not going anywhere. I will say that our executive director does look at the principals because she'll take comments that they put, but we are on a quota. So you don't have a lot of time to put, like I don't, and Keller doesn't, and Janine doesn't, so I don't know who does. But, if I was gonna go do a really good quality walkthrough, I'd be very, and it's a lot of times I can.
It went by fast too. And when I was leaving, it was like, well, do you have everything you need? I'm like, yep. I did the entire observation form, and I got everything that I needed. So
Good, very good.
I want to say I was probably in there at the most, maybe 25 minutes, if that, but between like 15 to 20 minutes.
They say 15, 20 minutes, so
it was fine.
it's a snapshot. You're not gonna see everything. A lot of times you're gonna see a test, which happens to us all the time too, because we're supposed to get 5 done a week. Well, inevitably I'll go in, oh, you're giving a test. What is this gonna look like? I'm not gonna give you a bad walkthrough. It's not bad, but if I go down and put NAs all the way down, that doesn't look good either. In
order to get to the test, something else had to be done beforehand. So.
And I always take that into consideration. Not for granted, but into consideration.
Oh, there we go. All right, so I used that information from the surveys and also the walkthrough observation, and then I came up with a teacher empowerment leadership growth plan. So that is what I'm going to talk about now. The first thing we already talked about was an interview panel. The timeline, I just put a timeline. It says June 2024, but I know we're in the midst of state testing and everything else, so if we need to, push it back per se for next school year, this is something that we can work on next school year. Then I think that would be awesome. Just getting input from other teachers. If there's enough time to provide like an interview panel for new hires. The second goal dealt with school-wide policies. That also has a timeline of June 2024, yes, excuse me. And persons responsible, teachers and an admin team. And that was just to grow. I just put a 15% percentage growth, but that was based off of the survey data that they took in March of 2024. So just trying to increase that number of teachers that are actually involved in like school-wide policies and procedures. Ms. Dinkins, like we said earlier, Ms. Dinkins does a very good job with this, but just making sure, one of the main goals I thought about was actually using the survey to make sure that the teachers are actually implementing those strategies that they are learning about in the PDs. So of course, the first thing we have to do is complete it, or the teachers will have to complete a survey to let us know, what they think they need, different types of professional developments, and then we'll actually use that to create the different PDs for next school year, and then hopefully teachers will be able to implement those strategies in the classroom, or effectively implement those strategies.
When you think about that, do you think that it should be open-ended, or do you think if you're giving it, you would give a list, a menu?
That's what I was thinking about it, because I was going to work on actually creating one for the artifacts that I have to turn in. I thought about open-ended, but then I thought they're probably not going to give a lot of input. So giving them choices, and then you can always do like an other line if you think about something, or they think about something else that they would like to attend, maybe like a conference, or something that. But I think I have to give them choices to pick from, and not open-ended, because me myself, if it was open-ended, I'm like, okay.
You're sitting there and you're kind of like, what do I need? What do I need? You want something to go by, like small group, AVID strategies, conscious discipline.
I think that'll be easier.
All that, and then other, and it might say, however they put it, but that will give them some food for thought, just to get them going at least. I think that'd be good. And then looking for the implementation, that's huge, because to me that's the final thing. So every school I've been at, and again, I'm going to say this year was a little different, but I think Whitney intended it. So did you go to the math conference?
I did.
Okay, so I think when you went to the math conference, you're supposed to come back, and you're supposed to, show something. And so being very intentional about getting that done, so that people are able to share it, and then watching to see, which we've been able to do just by going into your classrooms a lot. And I had one walkthrough that I did with somebody who went to the conference, and she specifically said, oh yeah, I learned that at the conference. And I was like, that's golden. That's what you want.
And I was also thinking about when we have our STAR PDs, like the reflex trainings that we have, the AVID strategy trainings that we have, the reading classes and stuff that they have with the PDs, like all of those things, we just have to make sure that we are effectively implementing them in the classroom, and not just just going.
Yeah, and things like reflex, anything like that, you can use a usage report to even monitor that. Yeah,
especially with the push that they're doing for My Path too.
MyPath, right? Perfect example.
Yes. All right, goal 5, this is something.
Oh, I love this so much.
This is something I don't think we do a lot per se, because we're so used to, once we get in our classrooms, just making sure that we do what we need to do for our teacher, but just giving us the option to actually peer observe other teachers, just to see what ideas and strategies that we can pick up on for other teachers in the building, whether it's in the building or possibly going to another school, just depends, but just I would think use it in-house first, and then maybe using other schools or going to other schools to just peer observe other teachers and what they're actually doing in the classroom. And this could be for this year, it could be for next year, just giving teachers opportunity.
Let me tell you, I've done it so many ways, but one way that we did it was very structured, where each person on the team at one point in the year had to prepare a lesson. Her teammates came in and watched. And then we all would leave and debrief with her, like, why did you do this? I love the way you did this. Tell me about that, or whatever. Then I had our TLC found this at Spring Valley when I was at North Springs last year. They did something where they put, I think it was some symbol outside the classroom. So say you want, your classroom is open for observers. They put, I think it was a pineapple, but I don't know what it was, something outside the classroom. And so then I'm looking for, during my planning, who can I go observe? Oh, I go to that classroom, she doesn't have it out there, so she don't want anybody in. Now, it was a nice way to get people comfortable with it, because you could only do it if you wanted to, And so, but now if I didn't have anything outside my classroom, it didn't keep me from going to your classroom because you had it out there. You see?
Yeah.
And so it was a really nice, easy way to do it, and people would just drop in. It's not quite as structured, and the bad part I would say of that is you don't always get in, like when you do walkthroughs. Like when we do walkthroughs, I don't always catch the beginning of the lesson, and so sometimes I go in and I'm like, I can't figure out what they're doing. But with a structure, you do have that. The good thing about that is you don't have to have coverage of teachers. So there's pros and cons to each.
Okay.
But with that, you don't have to have coverage of teachers because you're using your planning time and you're doing it on your time. You can go to one and stay for 10 minutes, or you could go to one and stay the whole time.
Okay.
Or you could say, I've been to one, I'm good. Or you could go one for 10, another one for 10, and then be done. You see what I'm saying? During your planning, you could kind of structure it however you want. Personally, I didn't love it, but it is a great way to build trust because most people are like hesitant, like I don't want anybody coming in and watching me.
Yeah.
That's how most people are.
Makes sense.
You know, and so you might want to think about that. I also think, and I don't know where you're going with all of this or what your plan is, but when it comes from you and it comes from one of your own, it's very different than when admin says this is what we're going to do.
Yeah.
So I love that you're doing this, and I hope that you're going to follow through with some of these and implement them. Go ahead.
And then the last one, I know we talked about this earlier too, the development or just teachers having input in the development of the school budget and of the Title I plan. I know the Title I plan, that one I guess might be a little bit easier depending on like the resources that we possibly want to use for next school year. School budget, haven't really, dug deep into that yet, but I think the Title I plan we might be able to, or teachers might be able to give their input in on a little bit more. I'm sure the one for this upcoming school year is probably already or in the process of.
Not yet.
Okay.
Yep.
And I know Ms. Dinkins did talk with us
about your program.
It might have been either last Wednesday or Wednesday before last. We went through and talked about all the different type of programs, if we wanted them, if we did not want them, so that was something that we did offer input on, but just
I think it's good to see the school budget is very interesting because sometimes there's not a lot of leeway.
Okay.
There is a discretionary fund that might have some area for leeway, but there's so many restrictions now. The Title I plan is a lot more open-ended, where you could say, talking about behavior, I'm just going to throw this out there. Don't say I said it, but I'm just saying. So talking about behavior issues, well, we have one guy, he's paid out of Title I, behavior interventionist. Could we have more? Or could they be a certified person who has a background in counseling? You know what I mean? Because that would be a higher budget item, Okay. And so you could, and Dr. Prowell's coming back April 22nd now. And so, it might be something that we want to talk to her about moving forward because she's going to work on that plan.
Yeah.
So, we might want to say, do you want to share this, share parts of it and kind of get it, maybe even like after school one day, voluntarily, you want to stay and have some input on the Title I plan, something like that. A lot of this does go back to time though, when we're thinking about time and we're trying to give unencumbered time and people leave after school or go to another job, it's made it very difficult for any kind of anything like that. It's very difficult now. Didn't used to be.
Yeah.
For a lot of reasons, but it is now.
And I think I want to say, I know with most of the people on my team, or at least JB, I, and Dr. Wilson, we have no problems with doing planning per se, because we normally help with Cyber Stars in the afternoon. So like, as far as, when we have our meetings for resource, they were like, no, you can have that school. No, we're going to have it during the day because, we do Cyber Stars in the afternoon.
Yeah.
So I don't think, I think if they know, like what the outcome would be, I don't think a lot of people would have a problem, providing input and that sort of thing. So,
well, and again, we could meet with teams all day.
Yeah.
We can meet with teams and make it voluntarily. To where during your plan, if you want to come in and you want to see the budget and you want to give some input, come on in. We could do it during the day that way.
Yeah.
As long as we're not saying you have to come to this.
Yeah, it's required. And I think that is it.
Well, I have no questions because you just talked through the whole thing, and I love that. I love that. You did a really good job. You gave a lot of good goals. I hope you're going to share that with us so that we can look at it and refer back to it. And then I would say let's meet again maybe after spring break, like give it a few days and find a time that we can meet to say which one do you want to start working on to implement.
That'll work.
Very good.
All
right. Well, I hope you get some rest over spring break. And
I was telling